Alexandra Feodorovna. Alexandra Feodorovna was born Victoria Alex Helena Louise Beatrice on June 6, 1872, in the German Empire. She was the sixth child of the Grand Duke Louis IV and Princess Alice of the United Kingdom. She was called Alex for short by most of her family. When she was young, her older brother Friedrich suffered from hemophilia and died in May of 1873, and only a couple of years later, her family suffered diphtheria, and Alex, her three sisters, her brother, and her father all fell ill. Their mother cared for them, however. She fell ill and died on December 14, 1878, and her sister Marie died a couple years later. When Alex was just 19, her father, the Grand Duke Louis IV, died of a heart attack, and following this, Queen Victoria, her grandmother, invited Alex and her siblings to spend a lot of time in England with their British cousins. Alex's family. Alexandra's mother was the second daughter of Queen Victoria, and her godparents included the Prince and Princess of Wales, Princess Beatrice of the United Kingdom, and the Duchess of Cambridge. Queen Victoria doted on the motherless Alex and became a very strong surrogate mother to her. She felt very highly protective of Alex, and even said, "While I live, Alex, till she is married, will be more than ever my own child." Queen Victoria wanted Alex to become Queen Consort of the United Kingdom, so she urged her to accept the proposal of her second cousin, and who was the future heir of the kingdom, Prince Albert Victor. Alex attended, however, she did not want to marry Prince Albert. So, in 1884, Alex attended a wedding of her sister Elizabeth to the Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich in St. Petersburg, and at this wedding, 12-year-old Alex met 16-year-old Grand Duke Nicholas, who was the nephew of the groom and the heir of the throne of Russia. In his diary, Nicholas called Alex "sweet little Alex" and declared, "We love each other." In January of 1890, Alex visited her sister again in Russia, and she and Nicholas spent time skating together, met at tea parties, and played badminton. Nicholas again wrote in his diary, "It is my dream to one day marry Alex. I have loved her for a long time, but more deeply and strongly since 1889, when she spent 6 weeks in St. Petersburg. For a long time I have resisted my feelings that my dearest dream will come true." Nicholas wrote this, but Queen Victoria opposed the match to Nicholas. She personally liked Nicholas, but she did not like that he was part of Russia, and she didn't believe Alex would be safe there. Their engagement. When his father's health failed in 1894, Alexander III decided to allow Nicholas to marry Alex so that he could secure his ascension to the throne. Despite her love for Nicholas, Alex was initially reluctant to marry Nicholas because she did not want to have to renounce her Lutheran faith to be included in the Orthodox Church. Nicholas was devastated, and he remained hopeful because her sister Ella assured him that Alex was utterly miserable and had a deep and pure love for him. And after realizing she didn't have to renounce her Lutheran faith to convert to the Orthodox, she accepted the proposal. The wedding and coronation. On November 1st, 1894, Alexander III died at the age of 49. Nicholas was confirmed as Tsar Nicholas II, and the next day Alex was received in the Orthodox Church, and Nicholas suggested she take the name Alexandra so that they would be the second Nicholas and Alexandra, like the first Nicholas and Alexandra. On November 26 of 1894, Alexandra and Nicholas married in the Grand Church of Winter Palace of St. Petersburg. And then on May 14, 1896, Alexandra and Nicholas were crowned rulers of Russia. And after a crowd incident with many deaths, the Russian civilians believed this was a sign that Nicholas's rule would be cursed and unhappy. Alexandra was extremely unpopular among her husband's Russian subjects. She was very shy and introverted, and this nature was interpreted as arrogance and coldness, and she struggled to make friends because she disliked her public role at court as the empress. Normally, like traditionally, the empress led the social scene and hosted numerous balls, but Alexandra was shocked by the gossip and love affairs that characterized parties, and she really just did not like that. Many people in St. Petersburg society dismissed Alexandra as a prude because she disliked these parties. She had a poor relationship with her mother-in-law, who had more power than her in court and wouldn't relinquish her rights to the jewels and the palaces as the new queen. Alexandra took her status as empress too far by not visiting peasants and only accepting gold and fine jewels only because she was concerned that she did not know how else to act as an empress. Okay, starting a family. Many Russians and members of the imperial family were disappointed that in November of 1895 Alexandra gave birth to her first child, and they were disappointed that it was a daughter. But Nicholas and Alexandra were delighted with their daughter and doted upon her. Until she could produce a male, the heir of the throne would go to Nicholas's brother and uncles. So, only a couple months after her first child, Alexandra was pregnant again, but she ended up having a miscarriage. And in the years to follow, she had 3 other females. And no one was worried about this because Alexandra was only 23 when she had her first child, and they believed she had plenty of time to have a boy. By the time she had 3 kids, she was getting nervous about having a boy, so they enlisted in the help of a mystic, Rasputin. And finally, in 1904, Alexandra gave birth to Alexei Nikolaevich. So, World War I. Alexandra's ties to Germany made her even more unpopular in Russia during World War I. Russians accused her of collaboration with the Germans, and Alexandra worked as a nurse to the wounded soldiers, but her efforts were much unappreciated. As a believer in autocracy, Alexandra persuaded Nicholas that he must never relinquish his absolute power as an emperor. Because of this, she fired and appointed so many ministers at this time. In only about 16 months, she'd gone through 5 prime ministers, 5 interior ministers, and 3 ministers of war. At this time, she was really greatly unpopular, and the court attempted to create a coup to overthrow the Tsar and the Tsarina, Alexander and Nicholas, because they didn't think they were handling the war right, and out of fear that the Empress was having a negative effect on the Tsar and the state of the affairs. And actually, the coup was led by Nicholas's mother herself. The Revolution. So World War I put a major economic and governmental toll on Russia. There were mass food shortages, a lack of agriculture production, failing transportation infrastructure, and the Tsar's decision to head the military and leave Alexandra in charge caused unrest because civilians believed a German in charge was just a plan to help Germany win the war. So steelworkers went on strike, and hungry crowds started rioting in the streets, and that lasted 2 days until the Tsar finally ordered the military to restore power and to fire upon the crowd to end this riot. As he rode a train back to St. Petersburg, however, the railroads were blocked, and he had to abdicate his throne on the spot for both him and his medically ill son. There were many attempts to storm the palace with Alexandra and her children after this, but they were defended by the palace guards, who eventually joined the revolution and turned against her and placed her and the Tsar under house arrest. Imprisonment. The provisional government at the time of the revolution wanted to get rid of the Tsar and Tsarina, but no one would accept them, no other country. King George would not even accept his own family because he was worried about how that would negatively affect the support from his subjects. So they were moved to Siberia to be out of harm and out of St. Petersburg. And their situation worsened a lot when the provisional government was overthrown by the Bolsheviks revolution, and they were taken to a prison called the Impatiev House. The Romanov, which is the Nicholas and Alexandra's family, went about their days as normal in this prison, and on Tuesday, July 16th, 1918, they had been going about their day, and they went to bed, but the guards on duty had been instructed to shoot the family. So they were taken to the basement of the Impatiev house, and Alexandra complained that there were no chairs for them to sit on, but they told them that they were going to be shot. The guards walked in with these revolvers, and they were ordered all to stand. Nicholas rose from his chair and only had time to utter the words, "What?" before he was shot several times. In the head, not in the head, instead he was shot in the chest. At this time, Alexandra instinctively turned away from him and began to make the sign of the cross, but before she could finish the gesture, she was killed with a single shot, and she had turned partly away, so she was shot in the side of her head. The rest of the family also was shot. Okay, so sainthood. In 1981, Alexandra and her immediate family were recognized as martyrs in the Russian Orthodox Church. And in 2000, Alexandra was canonized as saint. The rest of her family, her entire family, was canonized as passion bearers by the Russian Orthodox Church. And today she is still recognized as a saint. That is all. Thank you.